with the presentation of our guest. I want to present first our first guest, which is Matt Harwin. Maybe you know him, maybe you don't know him, but this is the founder and owner of Harwin Arabians. You have to know that Matt Harwin has been a breeder where? In Zimbabwe, exactly in Zimbabwe, for nearly a decade now, and he has a story since he was a teenager, breeding horses with his mom in his small stud. So he contacted us just after our last insider news, and actually I had a great talk with Matt, and he explained to me like everything that he has done in Zimbabwe and how is the situation of horses in Zimbabwe. So I couldn't resist to invite him to be with us today here at the Insider News. He imported many horses, Russian lines from USA, and now he's living in Zimbabwe in the Southern Africa. So let's see if he's already with us. Of course, Matt, where are you? Okay, I think he's coming. So I don't know but I am very curious to know everything about him. Ciao, Matt.
Hey, Francesca, how are you?
I'm very good, and you?
I'm very well, thank you.
So it's a great pleasure after our conversation by phone to have you with us here in the Insider News with our people and our followers watching us, because they want to know everything about you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a great opportunity and I'm so grateful to you.
Fantastic. So Matt, let's start with some questions. I want to know what type of horses you have in Zimbabwe.
Well, okay, so I mean, it's quite a hard question for me to give you a ballpoint answer on, but with the small population we have, we've got quite a bit of everything really. We've got horses that are very old-fashioned and colonial. I mean, horses that descend directly from the original imports of the 1960s. Most of these came from South Africa and England originally. And these horses tend to be a little bit more old-fashioned of what you would see a couple of decades ago. So, you know, straighter heads, very good bone, a bit taller, I would say about 15 hands and a bit over. And then on the other flip side of that, we do have a bit of modern breeding, which is also super exciting. You know, horses that descend from pretty famous modern show horses. We've got a bit of Marwan Al-Shakab blood, 𝐸𝐻𝐺𝑗ustice here, and a bit of variant also, which is quite exciting. And also we've got an import from Janov Podlaski also. So, I mean, you know, we do have a bit of everything, even though, you know, given the size of our population.
That's great. And on the Arabian horses that you have in Zimbabwe, it's most then for shows, or you also have the endurance, you have the racing? How is this divided?
So at present, you know, because we've only reformed the Arabian Society like last year, we don't have any Arabian specific shows at the moment. We do have something up our sleeves for 2024, which will be the first ever Zimbabwean National Championships. But predominantly the horses here are used just as riding animals. You know, they're pretty good all rounders. You do get the pretty flashiness of them, but a lot of breeders and owners keep them here specifically to do ridden work, and more so, you know, hacking and pleasure, and some of them do appear in dressage and show jumping, but yeah, it's mainly ridden sort of animals.
It's interesting to know. And I mean, I can imagine that to breed horses in Zimbabwe, it's for sure not as easy as Middle East or probably Europe or America. So my next question is, tell me which are the main difficulties in breeding horses in Zimbabwe? So,
I mean, for starters, let's start with the geographical location of Zimbabwe. I mean, we're a small landlocked nation directly north of South Africa. So, you know, for us to bring European or American imports in, it's extremely difficult. It's usually quite a long-winded, expensive process for, you know, the average breeder. And then, you know, when you flip side that, people will say, well, why don't you do frozen semen or embryo transfers and stuff like that to cut that out? But then that also becomes a whole new ball game, because importing semen from the US or Europe is also super expensive for us, because, for example, I looked into getting semen in at the start of this year, and the stud fee was going to be about $3,000 US. That's in the US. So then, you've got to add on your shipping costs, which is going to be about $1,000 via courier. Then when it arrives in Zimbabwe, our government taxes us on the semen. So we do get taxed quite a high percentage. And then after paying that, you then have to pay your vet to inseminate your mare, and you run the risk of her not taking. So by the time you walk away from that, you're looking at about $7,000 give or take, which for the small average breeder, which we all are, we don't really have any big programs going at the moment. It becomes a huge expense. And then also, embryo transfers have become a very new thing in recent years. It wasn't readily available to breeders here. We've only sort of started having our first successful embryo flushes with the vets here, within the last 5 years or so. I could be wrong, but I think it is around 5 years. So, there's that aspect also, geographical, as well as, how not far behind, because we now do have the reproductive technology, but how slow we were in getting to that stage.
I understand completely. For sure, it's not easy. It is anyway expensive for everyone, but for sure for you, it's even more. I understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
Matt, tell me a little bit about you instead. I know that you have some Russian bloodlines that you imported from USA, and now you can tell me a little bit about it. And I know that you have still the last son of a very important horse, that is Nariadniani. Just
Yes.
correct?
So, well, my love has always been Arabian horses in general since I was very little. And I grew up, my family are tobacco farmers. So the business has been handed down for generations. And with farming in Zimbabwe, horses come with the territory. And when I was very little, there was an Arabian stud right next door to the farm that I grew up on. And I would go over and have lessons there. And obviously, I was a little boy and I got to see all these beautiful Arabians and their stallions and the mares and stuff. And that's where the love sort of stemmed from with them. And I started competing in dressage when I was about 12 years old. And that was on a little Palomino part-bred Arabian pony. And that just sort of cemented the love and bond even more. And then from there, I sort of started breeding. I think I was about 17. I'm now nearly 27 years old. So, it's nearly a decade now. And that was at a time when purebred Arabian mares were extremely hard to come by in the country. So what a lot of people were doing, the next best offer was getting part-bred Arabs. So what I did is I got my first Arabian stallion. He was Old English, a grey horse. And we used him on an Anglo-Arabian mare. And then that was sort of the start of my program. And then I was on a trip to a stud farm in Bulawayo. So where I am geographically is I'm in Harare, which is the capital city of Zimbabwe. And Bulawayo is on the other side of the country. It's about a 6-hour drive. And I went there and I was visiting an old stud there that bred Arabians for a couple of years. And I saw this chestnut stallion and I absolutely fell in love with him. And my mum was with me. And yeah, I was 18 at the time. And I said to her, I'm going to own that horse one day. And she said, okay, yeah, we'll see, kind of thing. And yeah, I bought him when I was 18 and I took him home, and he is the same age as me, so he'll be 27 next year. And Nariadni breeding out of a Muscat daughter. And he was bred by Taylor Ranch Arabians in Utah, USA. And he was imported by a lady by the name of Linda Ferguson. She's now Linda Masterson. And this lady bred Tahama Balalina, who is a 2017 world champion there. So that's kind of how Veritas came into my life. And his name is Veritas, and he has been my equine soulmate for many years. He's not just a stallion and a breeding animal. He really is my true companion and confidant. We have tea in the mornings and biscuits, and we've seen a lot go on. So during the time when I did buy him, I was 18, I just finished high school, and I was immigrating to the United Kingdom to study because my dad is English. So it was just a natural next progression that I was going to move to the UK and study abroad there. And, at the time I thought I was going to live there. So mum kind of kept the horses, and the breeding was sort of had come to a complete halt. The stallions did cover outside mares during that period, but in terms of our actual foals on the ground, there were none for about a 5-year time span. And then I studied in equine also, and then from there I went into equine insurance in a firm in London. And then over the pandemic, I stayed there in the UK, and then I came back in 2021. And I sort of thought, well, I want to start breeding again, so let's use Veritas while we still have him. And I imported a beautiful mare from South Africa, and then, yeah, that's kind of where the breeding program as it stands now sort of originated from, which was 2021. So yes, I did officially start breeding nearly 10 years ago, but it's only really started taking off very recently,
Okay.
which is, yeah.
Okay. But it's a beautiful story, made for sure, made of passion and made of like sensation. So the sensation you had when you saw your horse and you just decided to go, and this is very nice. Also the fact that you're doing that with your mom and that your mom is also supporting you. It's such a beautiful thing. So. And what about, well, first of all, I want to ask to everyone that is following us, I want to say hi to Aldan at Stad because they just waved to us, and also 𝐈𝐍𝐸 Arabians. And if any of you that is following and watching us have been to Zimbabwe or know something more or have some question for our Matt, please let me know, okay? Just write a comment and I'm going to ask for you all. Beside that, Matt, I have another question because now we know everything about you. We know a little bit about the breeding in Zimbabwe, but I still have some question for you, like, how is the Arabian Horse Society, if we can define like this, in Zimbabwe? So how many breeders you have? How many horses you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start right at the beginning when the Arabian Society formed, which was originally in 1980. And there were 10 or so breeders back then. And so it formed in 1980, and then 𝐈𝐍𝐒 status was only obtained in 1996 at the Abu Dhabi conference.
Okay.
That's when our stud book was approved. And a lot of the Arabians here are based on South African genetics because, again, going back to the import situation, we could import from the UK and Europe at a time, but then it sort of halted for a bit. And then so mainly breeders brought in from South Africa because it was cheaper, really. With the society, I mean, they had 2 shows a year. We did national championships at the end of the year, and it alternated between Harare and Bulawayo. And it was really booming. And then through the economic hardships of the early 2000s, we experienced here, a lot of breeders moved. So they took their horses with them, and a lot of them went to South Africa. And as a result of that, there was no money at easy disposal to pay membership subs and things like that. So what had happened is the society eventually collapsed. And along with that, our 𝐈𝐍𝐒 membership became dormant because we weren't able to pay our renewal fees. And that was about 2002. It was the year that Balalina was actually exported from Zimbabwe. And from then, because no one was really breeding, I mean, some breeders, there were like 3 breeders that remained, and they were producing, 1 or 2 foals every couple of years or so. So it wasn't, enough to sort of keep a stud book going or anything. And then when I sort of got into the breeding sort of full scheme of things, I encountered the challenge of, well, I'm producing these foals, but they won't be registered. So what do I do now? And then I got in touch with some like-minded people who had also imported Arabians, and we started to rebuild the Arabian Society here. And I got in touch with 𝐈𝐍𝐒, and they said, we'd love to have you back on board and stuff. And we, renewed our subscriptions, and we're in good standing with them once again, which is super exciting.
That's great. That's so great. Congratulations, Matt. I'm very happy that Zimbabwe has people like you, because I mean, we need something like this, no? Every country needs people like you to really get it started, and then to get things done is not, for sure, not easy. But when they are done, probably more people will join, and this is what I wish for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, so I mean, we've got a hopeful and bright future ahead of us. I mean, what is so nice is my sort of equivalents in South Africa and Namibia, I'm very good friends with them, and we've kind of brainstormed this idea of the Southern African Arabian Horse Championships, which will happen every year, and it started this year. Because Zimbabwe is so young, we weren't quite ready to have a proper show. So what we did is we did tours of our stud farms here.
Okay.
And we had Scott Benjamin and Alan Preston out from Australia, which was absolutely amazing. And we just leaned in on their advice and, just lapped it all up, having them here. And the idea of the initiative is that breeders will be able to compete in a show in their home countries, and then the scores would be combined between the three 𝐸𝐻𝐻 nations, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. And then, final winners would be crowned based on that. So at the end of it, you'd have like a Southern African Arabian champion stallion and mare and so forth. So we came together and we were just like, it's better for the three of us nations to really try join together and work together, because trying to do it one up on our own is just impossible. It's not going to work, So it's quite special. And I think, the future's looking bright at the moment for us.
But that's a beautiful idea, really a beautiful idea. Well, please, Matt, if you will really manage to all together to organize this championship, let Arabian Insider know, because I would love to fly over and cover this event there with the.
We would love that. We would love to have you over anytime.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I will come. It's a promise. I also have witnesses.
Fantastic.
I
awesome.
today in front of everyone. I will come, and if you do the event that connects the three countries, I will for sure be there with the Arabian Insider team, so that we can share with the world what you guys are doing.
We would love that. Absolutely. Thank you, Francesca.
So, Matt, I thank you so much for your time today with us with the Insider News. I hope you enjoyed. And I wish you a beautiful evening. I don't know exactly what time is there.
I mean, we're on the same European time. So, I mean, that's fantastic. Thank you so much once again for having me and, letting me have this opportunity. I'm so grateful to you.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Whenever you want.
All right, Francesca. Cheers for now.
Ciao, ciao, Matt.